Deep Dark Galaxy managed to give me a good challenge. Continuing on the general patterns from before, Deep Dark Galaxy adds a little bit more challenge, showing that you're closer towards the end of the game. As a matter of fact, Deep Dark Galaxy is the first stage of the final dome, that being the garden. And it's got a strange vibe to it too. I don't know if it's because it starts off at a beach, but also has the nighttime theme, or if it's because you gotta dive deep down into the dark caverns to search for a ghost ship on your first mission. But there's definitely an uneasy feeling in this one that probably matches up to the haunted stage. The difference is the ghostly galaxy was meant to give off that vibe. That's part of the whole gimmick of being a haunted house. This one kind of has, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, a feeling of a negative aura. But it's like an actual thing, like I think it was intentional. I don't think I'm going insane like the people who made all those videos about Mario 64. I think that the designers of this stage were actually going for this type of dark theme. I mean, they called it the Deep Dark Galaxy after all. And credit to them, I think they succeeded at it. It's also fairly unique. Like when you're actually playing through it, you might notice some things that you've seen in other levels throughout the game, but in my opinion, none of it really feels all that repetitive. Even if there are challenges that I would say are inspired from similar ones in other stages. I mean, there are literally reused boss fights in this one, but I don't know, something about it feels different. Actually, I know what feels different. Traversing around the stage feels different. Advancing to collect the stars and making it towards those repeated challenges and boss fights feel different. Basically, if something is going to be repeated but you manage to make everything else around it enjoyable, and more importantly challenging and unique enough to justify the stuff that you reused, then while many others complain about it, I'll be one that probably defends it. But I guess I'll actually have to go through the missions in order to figure out if I can defend it. And as I previously mentioned, the first star is the underground ghost ship. You start off in this opening area with really nowhere to go except for this cannon that will blast you off into a planetoid in the sky where you can collect a fire flower. And of course, where there's a fire flower, there are torches. So you gotta be quick enough to make it back down there and shoot the fireballs in order to make it to the next section, which is a deep underwater cave. As you swim lower and lower, there'll be a little path for you to follow, some bricks for you to knock out of your way, and eventually a switch that you have to flick in order to move forward. After that, you've basically found the ghost ship. Waiting for you is another encounter with Camilla. The fight starts off the same way it did last time. She'll be out in the distance and eventually one of her projectiles will be green and that one will turn into a green shell. But she does take more shots until the green shell actually comes out, so you'll have to spend more time dodging. Once you hit her, she'll be up in your personal space and you'll have to continue on and hit her a second time. The big change here is that on the third hit, she'll go up to a crow's nest where she'll summon 2 little magic Koopas. Due to how small this little area is, it actually could be pretty tricky. It's a good thing I searched a little bit before I got to this challenge because I was able to find a 6-hit mushroom, because I'm almost certain I would have lost a life if I did not find it. Between the fire flower challenge in the beginning and swimming your way through, dodging all the enemies, it's not really that crazy of a challenge, but it was a pretty fun star to have to go through. But when you do make it to Camilla and you get up into that crow's nest, I think it's a pretty good difficulty jump for the first star in the endgame galaxy. Moving on, the second mission is titled Bubble Blast Off. So you start off with a repeated boss fight, but really it's more of a mini-boss. It's that same Bubble Bazooka from earlier. You know the drill, just get up there and ground pound him a few times. Once that's all said and done, you'll get access to the cannon once again. I'll admit that I don't think this is the right way you're supposed to do this, but I thought I would experiment and blast off to the left, and sure enough, I landed on a platform. Apparently you're supposed to grab a fire flower and blast a bunch of torches and then use an ice flower to create some platforms, but I think this is a lot more fun. After I got up there, I just kind of kept moving forward. Basically, you have to go through a string of challenges while hoping you don't fall down because then you'd have to start all over. There'll be magic Koopas along your route, fireballs, bubble shots, all kinds of things that could throw you off your balance. When you finally make it to the top, one of the bubble shots will send you over to a small planet out in the distance, at which point you'll just have to easily ground pound the 3 stumps to get sent to the next section. You're standing on a planetoid with these lasers that are trying to harm you, and you have to run around the outside of this capsule and ground pound the 3 tennis balls in order to free the star. It's weird to me that you ground pound these stars in order to make a watermelon expand, but it is what it is. I think this is another fun star. I think the shortcut that I took makes it a lot more memorable, and even with the shortcut, I found it to be quite a bit of a challenge. And when I looked up the actual long way to do it, or I guess the planned way to do it, it's seemingly a pretty difficult one. But as it stands for me, Deep Dark Galaxy is 2 for 2. And that's despite the fact that there are basically 2 repeated boss fights. And if you want repetition, Guppy's back. So at the start of this star, they let you right in. The caves open and you can work your way towards the lake so you can swim downwards. There are a few Gringos swimming around, so you do gotta be a bit careful, but really you should be able to make it to Guppy pretty easy. He's gonna hit you with another challenge where you gotta swim through the 8 rings. The thing is, while in Sea Slide Galaxy this felt like it was kind of a mundane mission, over here it's a lot more difficult. As you follow the orca, you'll have to avoid various obstacles. This includes mines that'll explode on impact, bloopers that you gotta swim between, even little ghost jellyfish. I think it took me 2 attempts to accomplish this one, but I actually felt like I accomplished something this time. And I appreciate that. I felt like Guppy was kind of underutilized the first time around. At least over here I can be like, yeah, you know what, maybe the penguins are onto something to avoid this guy. So once again, even though this is something that is repeated, I think it is a fun star to go through. And after that, it's a Daredevil Comet. You gotta take on Camel again, and this time you only get 1 hit. So just like I said before, the first 2 hits are pretty easy, but it's that crow's nest battle that'll really get you. And it's kind of annoying because every time you do lose a life, you gotta work your way back up there again and make the first 2 hits. This was good. Like, as a general challenge. As an annoyingly frustrating segment. So good that it feels like it could sit along with the best of them in Delfino Plaza. I stopped counting, but I'm pretty sure I lost 6 lives on this one. And I think it was the first and potentially only section of the game where I was going through it and not sure if I could beat it or not. Well, I mean, obviously I knew I could beat it, but just that little feeling of, like, dread was over my shoulders. And in most cases that might annoy me, but playing Mario Galaxy, I found that to be refreshing. Which means not only did I find this to be a good star, I actually thought it was one of my most enjoyable ones in the game. And it really just highlights why I always like the Daredevil Comets. Just like I harped on in previous segments, the psychological battle of doing these fights with a single hit is probably more difficult than the actual fight itself. Which is why I always appreciate the Daredevil Comets and what they have to offer. And with all the stars collected, it's time to go after the hidden star. In the same vein the Daredevil Comet knocked me on my butt and made me lose my mind in frustration, the hidden star here almost made me go mad. So first up, this is an open sandbox, so you gotta look everywhere. I kinda swam around for a while searching. I was gonna use the green shell to attack one of the Gringos, but then on a whim, I decided to shoot the green shell at the mines. And luckily, that caused a launch star to appear. It takes you up to this weird mystery box. You sort of have to use the gravity around the walls to maneuver and get the boo that has the star inside it to follow you. There's also one of those dust balls rolling around that could be really annoying, so much so that I actually lost a life. And what's worse is that when you lose your life, you gotta go back to the lake and blow up the mines again. But as you use the different springs and the bubble shots to get around the gravity and flick the switches in the right direction, eventually you'll be able to crack open a window that'll let some light in, lure the boo towards you, and when it dissipates, you'll be able to collect a star. And once that's all said and done, you got your 5 stars, with the only thing remaining being the purple comet star. Which of course I'll be going over in a later segment. So the reality is I do like this galaxy. I think the increase in difficulty makes it a lot more memorable. I think the uniqueness and the vibe of the area in general makes it fun to play through. I think I have seen some complaints about this one being a little bit more forgettable, and I could probably agree with that, or maybe even understand it. This one is kind of similar to Sea Slide Galaxy in that it takes a lot from the previous stages and throws them into this one. But the difference is when it does it here, this stage feels a little bit more unique, whereas in Sea Slide Galaxy, it felt like it was just grabbing scraps from all over the place and throwing into a single galaxy. And not to mention the added amount of difficulty in this one makes it a lot more enjoyable too. You gotta use the fire flower to open up the torches, except you gotta really be quick to make sure that the fire flower doesn't run out before you shoot the torches. You have to face off against Camel again, twice actually, only this time when she's sitting in the crow's nest, it's much more difficult to take her on when her little minions than it was when she was just on the ship. You once again have to chase Guppy to go through the 8 rings, only this time Guppy is actually putting your maneuverability to the test. You're not simply just following him in a straight path, rather you're actually being careful and focused on where you're maneuvering. There's a lot more precision involved, and that precision makes it feel like a much more different challenge. And then add on to that the hidden star in the stage. It joins the ranks of the hidden stars in the other open sandbox stages where it allows you to traverse and look everywhere to collect a star. And I don't shy away from the fact that I love these stars, and it's largely because of my affinity towards Mario 64. I wouldn't even consider it that obscure. I think there's more of a puzzle element to it, but that just makes me like it even more. Genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised if people had to look it up. I wouldn't be surprised if I had to look it up in a previous playthrough. I mean, I figured it out this time without looking anything up, but it's entirely possible that my subconscious remembered it from the last time I played the game, when 3D All-Stars first came out. Ultimately, however, I don't think this is one of my favorite stages in the game, but I cannot deny that the uptick in difficulty is a very welcomed one. And while it might not necessarily be better than Toy Time Galaxy, far from it actually, I think I can appreciate this one for being the third final stage in the game and really feeling like it belongs in the end game. The question is what kind of an impact the final 2 stages will have. So let's discuss that over at Dreadnought Galaxy.